Welcome to Beyond Neutral. I'm your host, Paula Reed. I think of the journey of life as a road that we're driving down. We get to speed up on the straightaways, ease back on the curves, and I don't know about you, but I've certainly had the obstacle in the roadway that I never expected to see, and I had to either slam my brakes on or swerve to avoid hitting it. But whether we're talking about our careers or relationships, or even just managing through life's phases, life is all about shifting and moving from one place to another. The challenge is that sometimes, in trying to get from where we were to where we want to be, we can get stuck while we're trying to shift. And we land in what I call the neutral space, where we're applying old ways of thinking to new situations. Join me and some incredibly inspiring guests as we talk about what it takes to shift into gear and get to where you want to be. Because here's the deal, if you're sitting in neutral, you're going nowhere. Welcome to today's episode of Beyond Neutral. So excited to have with me Elizabeth Cowper. Elizabeth is just, when I tell you her bio, it's going to be, wow, she's pretty much a badass. But basically, she has over 20 years of HR leadership experience for some of the world's best known brands, including Planet Organic, Harvey Nichols, LVMH, and Tapestry, which is the parent company of Coach, Kate Spade, and Stuart Weitzman. In that role, she was the vice president of HR for Europe, the global head of well-being, and part of the global DEI committee. And in 2020, she left all of that corporate experience behind, and she launched her own entrepreneurial enterprise, which we are going to talk with her about today. She has so many amazing awards credited to her, consistently listed as one of the top most futuristic businesswomen, pioneering innovation, and top 5 unstoppable women leaders to watch in 2023. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth. Like I said, that is a badass bio. I'm going to give you that.
Thank you so much. It makes me feel a bit shy when you say it like that, but I'm very grateful for the wonderful intro. Thank you.
You're welcome. Having spoken to you enough, I'm going to have complete confidence that you can overcome your shyness pretty easily.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes.
That is fair. That's great. So that has been quite a journey. I'm first interested to talk about the entrepreneurial enterprise that you launched in 2020 called Ludo, correct? Mm-hmm. And tell us just a little bit about, you were in this corporate thing, but tell me about that. First of all, that platform and what it's all about.
Sure. So my platform, Ludo, is a company that provides technology for inclusion in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So we sell into HR leaders, company owners to really help them drive a culture of inclusion in business. We know it really matters now more than ever. And so we're there to support companies in knowing how to do it well and to give insights and information to employees to help them through critical life stages. Mm-hmm. We have an angle on focusing on women, but we really are about inclusion for all. But the reason we began with focusing on women is because the gender pay gap is still horrendous. Mm-hmm. And McKinsey reports it'll take 136 years to close if we continue at the same rate. And McKinsey said we need to hurry history and we need intervention. And I see Ludo as the intervention of stepping in and helping companies really reach gender parity and get to a place where we can get the gender pay gap closed faster. But we're really about inclusion for all.
Okay. So Ludo starts with the first inclusion aspect of the platform is around maternity, correct? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the first module we launched.
So what made you think about that as the first module? Because that transition period, I know, is from personal experience and experience with clients across the world. That's a big one, right?
It's massive. Mm-hmm. I have 3 children who are 20, 17, and 7, 2 girls and then a boy. And I've always worked full time in my career, always been hugely passionate about what I've done in my job. But of course, I've raised 3 kids as well. And I have seen amazingly brilliant women drop out of the workplace or struggle with those challenges of raising a family and being able to meet their career needs. And we know there's huge amounts of research on this, that having a child is really impactful on a woman's career and on her earning potential. And so I had a personal journey for that. And just by the nature of being an HR leader and seeing some of the impacts on women, I felt there was a gaping hole in how maternity was managed by companies. And we could do a whole lot better in terms of the support we give that person going through having a child and growing their family, but also to the HR leaders and line managers on how they can do a much better job of engaging that talent through that life-changing period. So I was motivated, I suppose, by my own personal journey and the job that I was doing.
In your experience, either personally or when you were supporting women going through that process, what did you see as the biggest challenge around that?
I think that one of the biggest challenges we have is consistency of treatment. And I don't mean that necessarily in a terrible way, but we have line managers at all different levels of experience and knowledge, and they may or may not have their own children. It doesn't necessarily matter. But when a woman steps forward and says, I'm pregnant, how that person responds and then supports that woman through that journey can be the difference that makes the difference. And one of the things we learned through our research of looking at how we really wanted to model the way in which we support maternity was that women are frequently ignored, is probably the right word, or they receive very little communication. So they announce they're pregnant. They typically get given a copy of the company policy, an explanation about the pay they will receive, and then they go on maternity leave, and frequently they hear absolutely nothing from the business. And, we know that your entire identity is shaken up in that process. And then this part that was safe to you, which was your job, which a lot of people, not just women, many people take great purpose and passion and energy from that job. Then suddenly you've got this tiny being. You're thinking, my gosh, where do I fit? And what's going with my job? And do they want me? And who's covering for me? And what's it going to be like when I get back? And giving support through that uncertainty and having an agreement about the way in which that company will communicate with you when you're out of the business can be so supportive and so helpful. And I think getting some consistency across how we do that in businesses is really powerful.
That's fascinating. That's excellent. Now, you actually launched the product in 2021. Is that right?
Yeah, so we launched with our MVP product on maternity in 2021, and then launched our full product in October 2022 when we added our menopause module, and then our learning hub, which is our resource for line managers and HR leaders to help have in the moment bite-sized learning opportunities to know how to truly drive a culture of inclusion. So yeah, our full product launched in October 22.
That's fabulous. That's excellent. So October 22, you're just really starting to be able to see the impact and really be able to have it used right now, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so just starting. Oh, that's excellent. Good for you. Good for you. Anything you want to share about that experience or what companies are experiencing with that?
I mean, it's really exciting to see it in our clients and see it being used and get feedback from our clients about how brilliant it is for them. And it's just really exciting as a founder of a business to think that this idea I had is now real and it's happening, and we can make such a difference to how people feel in the workplace. And we know particularly, we're in a downturn, we're post the pandemic, and this is a time when many employees can feel lost or disengaged, or they want to feel that investment and commitment from their business that they matter, and we are helping with that, and that's a really exciting thing to see. But in terms of sharing about the journey, I mean, I was employed in a job, I had a corporate job for my whole career. And this is the first time I stepped out and built my own thing. And so it's been, oh gosh, there's so much I could say about the journey. It's been a heck of a ride.
Say. You talked a little bit about your own experience with this and feeling like it was an opportunity for you to make a difference and to really drive the inclusion aspect of employees, which I know is something that you have as your own identity, as just your thing is driving inclusion, right?
Absolutely.
That's your passion.
And a culture of success. culture is everything in a business. And for me, it plays a huge part. Culture, well-being, inclusion, DEI, strategy, all of that sense of who are we in a business is what drives the belonging and psychological safety of the employees. That is my thing. That's my, I was described as the culture adjuster once. That's probably a really good summary of me. Elizabeth is the culture adjuster.
That's fabulous. That's fantastic. Talk about a North Star, right? Yeah. That's excellent. It's interesting you say that, because I'm thinking through my experience in search and my experience in coaching. And I can remember several situations where, I had clients who had these, women who were superstars at the company, or really hardcore, even at the middle management level, just really hardcore contributors who found out they're pregnant, and they go to their employer, and their employer says, oh yeah, well, you get the disability based on the, what the state gives you. And they suddenly realize that they basically have no money or very little money for 8 weeks, and then they have no money. And in the United States, it's far worse than it is, I know, in the UK. And like their foundation of like what they imagined this journey was going to be like immediately is shaken. And their whole sense of who their employer is and what it means to work there and how they view them as a person shifts in a moment. And tell me a little bit about that and how your product aims to really change that part of that process.
I mean, I think it is, we know it is way worse in the States in terms of the amount of time you get off than it is in the UK and in Europe. You're absolutely right. But in terms of how we support, so just to kind of make it real, any employee has access to our expert content at any stage. So you could be thinking about being pregnant, you could be in an early stage pregnancy. Important to note here, we talk about maternity, but you could be a same-sex couple who's adopting or have a surrogate, so this is inclusive of anybody growing their family, and it's
moving
really
to parenthood. Anybody moving into parenthood,
exactly,
basically.
and it's important we mention that. But the point, so you can read all of our content and explore it before you've told the company, and that's important for me because you might not be ready to share, or sadly you might experience a miscarriage or loss, and there's information and support on baby loss. But the point at which you can then share with the company, our tech takes you through, it takes literally 3 minutes, a little kind of questionnaire which talks about how long you'd like to be out of the business, how often you'd like to be contacted. It connects you to other people having children at the same time based on 3 months each side of the due date by geography, business sector, and by your own company. And so you're then into this network and communication plan that from the second you've shared you're pregnant, you feel like you're part of something. So the connecting with other parents is really powerful, and it's from also outside your own business. So if you're working for a small business where there may not be another person who's pregnant, you can still connect in your industry sector or by geography. And then the basis on how much you want to be contacted, our tech sends trigger alerts to HR and the line manager saying, dear Paula, Elizabeth has said she's, pregnant and wants to be contacted monthly. She's going to be off from this date. And then we send alerts and reminders to say, please update Elizabeth on changes in the team or things. So we handhold that relationship, which the expectant parent can turn on and off at any time. So in their login, they can say, I'd like to be contacted more or less, or leave me alone, or whatever it might be. But what we're doing is from that moment, we're saying, you matter. We're going to really listen to what you want, and we're going to pay attention to that. And I think that is one of the big steps that we're taking to change this kind of experience where an expectant parent says, I'm having a baby. We give them a letter, and this life-changing thing is happening. No one even mentions it. Then it becomes this unmentionable subject, which feels very weird.
Yeah, it's interesting, Elizabeth, because I think one of the things, as I think about that, one of the things that, women, and I think it's the same for men, but maybe to a smaller scale, just by virtue of society, nothing else there. But there is this identity shift that just nobody sees coming. I think I can remember myself, and I've owned my own business, but even with that. And so it's really about a lot of what you're talking about is having a workplace that's identifying with the whole person and they're employing the whole person, right? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times I think what happens with people and what makes it really hard, especially for women to reintegrate into the workforce after they've been out, is that identity that, you know, I'm this person at work, and then now I have a baby and I'm that person, but I don't know how the two of them go together. So what you're really talking about is sending a message from the very beginning that those two worlds combine into one, and that the organization sees those two things as being intertwined, which, you know, is a really tough thing for women, is to figure out how those two things work together.
It's really tough. And our content inside our tech, so the type of content we have, I mean, it's everything and anything from hypnobirthing to breastfeeding to what do you pack in your hospital bag. But we also have maternity coaches we work with who have written content of, you know, how do I manage guilt? You know, how do I prepare to return back into the workplace? You know, choosing the right childcare, imposter syndrome, juggling anxiety, you know, how to manage. There's a really good breath specialist who's one of our expert partners. We have a video on how to calm your breath when you feel anxious. So we're, through our tech and the resource available to all employees, we're looking at the whole wraparound of all those moments that you might need some support. And our maternity module is broken into 4 sections: being at work when you're pregnant, being on maternity leave, preparing to return, and then being back in the office. So there's support at all of those 4 key stages, recognizing not just the practical stuff like, you know, how do I get my baby to sleep better? And we partner with Battelle, this amazing sleep school based in the US, actually. But also the emotional stuff. You know, how do you deal with the overwhelm, and what might be a good resource to help you through that?
That is the huge thing, is how do you know, you're shifting from having a career, from working, right, to now being a mother, to now being a working mother. And it doesn't happen naturally. In fact, it's, to your point, it's one of those places where so many women opt out of the workforce. And because they almost feel like they have to choose, they don't know what the shift is they have to make in how they think about work and how they think about parenting, right? They're those two separate identities. And that's the place where, and I think to your point, that's where now women get pushed back from a pay standpoint. And tell me a little bit about what kind of insights you have around that transition.
The transition back into the business.
The transition back into the business.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly hard, and every person is different, you know, and I think just to sort of take a step back for a second, we know that diverse boards are better for profits and companies. So having gender diversity, you have 1/3 of women, 10 times greater profits. And that's just a really, you know, one of the stats that are out there on why it matters. So if you're a business that wants to retain its female talent, you have to be able to support each woman through her own individual journey, to value her and take her through these key moments that matter in life. And that requires you providing resource and support and making adjustments that are individualized to women who are coming back into the business, because we are never going to achieve the level of inclusion and diversity we want at board level, which, remember, it's good for business profits. If you're the CFO thinking of this, you know, get your CFO mind on, if that's your lens. You know, that's not my lens, but if that's your lens, and see why this really matters for businesses. And then that allows people to be more broad-minded, because every department's got a balance sheet of saying, okay, you know what, when Paula returns into the business, she wants to come back 2 days for the first 2 weeks, then 3 days, then whatever it might be. And that's not normally how we've seen that happen, but that's what Paula's asking for. And we ought to look at how we can accommodate that. And I think that is really important, particularly as the workplace is shifting more to a culture of individualization than it ever has before, where actually the pandemic's been good for that, incidentally. But pre-pandemic, there was a lot more of the types of conversations where we said, we can't accommodate that here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that won't work for us.
That just won't work.
Yeah.
And
you have to be here to do your work.
Yeah. And actually, there's no reason why we can't just make some accommodations for a month period to make these adjustments. And I think this is where the mindset in companies really needs to shift to allow us to retain that brilliant talent and support her in that return back into the workplace.
It is amazing that the mindset needs to shift, because that we can't accommodate that for a month. So therefore we're going to find somebody else that we don't know and put them into this role. I work in search, and I'm always amazed when I look at that and think, you're going with the risk of a new person not working is so much greater than accommodating somebody who's been a performer for you consistently. And I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had throughout my career where a woman will call and say, hey, I want to think about going to a different company after, I'm pregnant, after the baby, because my current employer is really not family friendly. Yeah. And it's amazing to me, and it's tough. And part of that comes from the very beginning part of it is what they see from others and the experience they have. And part of it is how they feel the moment they tell people they're pregnant, and the fear of doing that women have.
Yeah, exactly. Women are very fearful of it. They really are. And also, let's just remember that churning talent costs companies money.
Tons of money.
There's a crude calculation that all HR leaders use, which is it's 1.5 to 2 times a person's salary. There's a formula behind that, which you can Google.
Okay. I know it. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. No, but for anyone else listening, as to why it costs that much money to churn your talent. Now, that is a massive motivator to keep the talent you've got and support them through life-changing stuff. We're human as well. We're human. There are real emotions and real people involved here.
Yeah. And if it's not this life-changing thing, it's another life-changing thing. And so what it really is about employers embracing the whole person and realizing the ebbs and flows that come with life and come with change. And, at the end of the day, are you getting what you expect to get out of that person over the tenure of their career with you? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's phenomenal. So you're evolving this from pregnancy, from maternity into other life milestones, I call them.
We launched menopause, which was our next module. We launched that one in October when we launched our full product.
Wasn't that a dirty word at one point?
It so menopause, was. Yeah. I mean, it was never even mentioned. I learned the other day there was never a record of an employment tribunal in the UK relating to the menopause at all until the first one was 4 years ago. And now the percentage cases are rising exponentially. Wow. But it was never until 4 years ago. But yes, it was a dirty word. And now it's not. And I'm delighted it's not. There was a stat shared by Bloomberg end of 2021 that said that global productivity losses relating to the menopause had topped 150 billion.
Wow.
I know, massive. And when you look at that, you think, this is why we need to be talking about it. 1 in 4 women have very severe symptoms, and that can be as much as proper agoraphobia, huge anxiety, can't leave the house, really deep depression. Like that's 1 in 4 have very severe symptoms. It could be physical symptoms, body aches, hot flushes, etc. 50% of women have some symptoms, but they're manageable. And 25% of women sail through and don't have any symptoms. But what's been happening, what's contributed to that statistic is women dropping out of the workplace, women having
yet again,
increased absence relating to the symptoms. And incidentally, it is suggested that over 20% of sick notes aren't telling the truth. So a woman, or anyone, not just a woman, but a sick note might say, I'm off because I've got the flu, but it might be a mental health reason or related to menopause, but the person doesn't feel safe enough to share. So they put a different reason on their absence. But all of these absences are contributing to this drop in productivity or just being unable to focus whilst in the workplace. So when organizations are able to address this as another life-changing time in our world for women, then we can really retain that talent through that challenging time. Now, it might be a woman that experiences some challenging symptoms. She asked for a meeting from her manager to go on a 10-day doctor's appointment. She gets HRT or bioidentical hormones or whatever it might be. And there's a period of adjustment, but it all could be righted within 3 or 4 months, or even less, or maybe a bit longer. But if we can just help that woman through that and not judge and shame and make her feel afraid of talking about it, she'll probably pop out the other side with her feelings, her symptoms back under control and be back to being, a great performer in the office. But there is a culture, I think, of suddenly a woman drops off and she's menopausal age, and there's is she all right? We were about to promote her to she's level, but I'm not sure. So just raising awareness of this for everybody in a business is super powerful. It really is.
Once again, employing the whole person, right?
Of
Supporting
course.
The whole person.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Somebody asked me once, I was on a podcast about ageism, and they were asking at what age do women, at what age is age an impact on women in the workforce? And I said, every age, right? I mean, there's no age that you're free, right? You're either having kids, or in your case, and the tough thing about menopause is most women, they're mid 40s to early 50s. They're at the absolute peak of their, they are climbing to the top. And absolutely. That's fabulous. Well, absolutely fascinating platform that you've had the passion to get your arms around. I'd love to learn, and I'm excited for you, and I'm really excited to see how this takes off and changes cultures within organizations, because once a couple of them recognize the power of this, obviously others will adopt it, because to your point, it drives profit, right? An engaged workforce drives profit. That's fabulous.
No, absolutely. And just to let you know, we launch Ludo Health at the end of in March of this year, which is on the 4 pillars of health. So mental health, physical health, spiritual health, and financial health. So we're just building our content for that module. Then in Q2, we're launching Ludo Fertility, which is really key for me.
Huge one. Yep.
My first 2 children are IVF, and I'm very open about that.
So
and I know.
I tell them always gems. They were frozen. They started life frozen.
That's why I have such a big gap. 2017, because then this really miracle thing happened when I produced another one naturally. And I was
like, wow, did not see that one coming. Exactly. There you go.
He was a very happy surprise. And then we're launching Ludo Parents in Q3. So then that's about that support for, parents with teenagers, older kids, and all those things that you and I well know.
Absolutely. And then there's the sandwich. Then you get to the sandwich of you're a parent in those ages, and then your parents are aging, and you're trying to deal with both sides of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Life is a journey. I say life is a road we're driving down, man. You just never know what the turns are along the way. That's so excellent. Hey, thanks so much for joining us this week on Beyond Neutral. I'm your host, Paula Reed. Make sure to visit our website, www.readandco.com, for this week's show notes. And if you found value in today's episode, I would appreciate you giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts, or share it with a friend. Also, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. All of this helps to support the show. Have a great week.